a Jerusalem Perspective production.
Was Jesus a Confirmed Bachelor? By David N. Biven. Read by Joshua N. Tilton. The commandment, "Be fruitful and multiply," Genesis 1:28, has always been strongly emphasized in Judaism, both today and in the first century. It is therefore surprising that Jesus, who in every other way observed the commandments, did not marry. At least, the New Testament gives no indication that he had a wife or children. On the other hand, it is not explicitly stated in the Gospels that Jesus was not married. As Hilton and Marshall point out, the silence of the Gospels might suggest that Jesus was married. A Jew reading the Gospels might assume that Jesus was married. If Jesus had not been married, his unusual status probably would have been mentioned in the Gospels. The First Commandment. The sages taught that one should perpetuate the human race by marrying. It was considered especially significant that the commandment, "Be fruitful and multiply," is chronologically the first in the Pentateuch. The school of Hillel ruled that to fulfill this commandment, a man must have at least one son and one daughter. No man may neglect the commandment, "Be fruitful and multiply," unless he already has children. According to the school of Shammai, 2 sons. According to the school of Hillel, a son and a daughter. As it is written, male and female he created them. Genesis 5:2. Mishnah Yevamot 6:6, and see the Babylonian Talmud, Yevamot 64a. Would the members of first-century Jewish society have respected an unmarried 30-year-old teacher? Would his teachings have been given a hearing? At the urging of my colleague Dwight Pryor, I asked Professor Shmuel Safrai for his opinion. At the time, 1987, Safrai, a specialist in Jewish literature and history of the Second Temple period, and one of my teachers during the 1960s, was Professor Emeritus at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. A Bachelor Sage. According to Safrai, a bachelor sage functioning within Jewish society of the first century was not as abnormal as it might first appear. Sages often spent many years far from home, first as students and then as itinerant teachers. It was not uncommon for such men to marry in their late 30s or 40s. Just as some students today wait to marry until they finish their education, so there were disciples and even sages who postponed marriage until later in life. One such sage was Rabban Gamliel, end of the 1st century A.D., the grandson of Rabban Gamliel the Elder, the Apostle Paul's teacher. Acts 22:3, see Acts 5:34. As the following story shows, the younger Gamliel was already a sage and already had disciples before he married. A bridegroom is exempt from reciting the Shema on the first night of his marriage. When Rabban Gamliel married, he recited the Shema on the first night. His disciples said to him, "Master, didn't you teach us that a bridegroom is exempt from reciting the Shema on the first night?" "I will not listen to you," he replied, "so as to cast off from myself the kingdom of heaven, even for a moment." Mishnah Berachot 2:5. Enamored with Torah. Another unmarried sage was Shimon ben Azai. He lived in the generation immediately after the destruction of the temple in 70 A.D. It is related of him that in his teaching he so strongly emphasized the importance of the commandment to marry, his colleagues expressed their amazement that he did not do so himself. His answer? "What shall I do? I am enamored with Torah. Others can enable the world to continue to exist." Tosefta, Yevamot 8:7. So we see that it would have been possible for Jesus to have been accepted as a teacher in first-century Jewish society, despite the fact that he was not married. Although Shimon ben Azai was not married, he did not endorse the unmarried state. He may have married later in life. Jesus was probably not a confirmed bachelor either. He was still relatively young when he was crucified, and his death may have come before he had a chance to marry.